thank you. And just so happy 200th anniversary. That's 200 years of the outside world influencing eye care in India, but also the reverse, 200 years of India influencing eye care around the rest of the world.
Right.
So this is a little bit different from the other presentations you have here today. This is a little bit look at history, look at where we are now, and at what possibly could happen in the future. If you want more information on history, there are some wonderful eye museums in India. Elliott School's Eye Museum in Chennai, Museum of Ophthalmology, the Retina Foundation. As we know, 200 years ago, Raja Sarfolji was integrating Western medicine with Indian medicine and providing eye care in southern India. And while he was influenced by the West, it goes the other way too. So a little bit later, Charlotte Ellaby, 1885 or 1884, came to Mumbai to set up the first eye clinic for women in Mumbai. And after coming here, she started studying Indian medicine. And we know that because she wrote about it later. And she saw that a lot of the teachings in Indian medicine were at the basis of teachings in Western medicine. And also that the medicines that Britain was flooding India with at the time, putting out of business local businesses, that the advantage was in manufacturing, it wasn't in medical knowledge, that these medicines from England used active ingredients from India. So a little later, Lieutenant Colonel Henry Smith and Noor Ali developed what became known as the Smith-Indian technique for cataract surgery. Became known around the world. Doctors from Europe and the US would come to India to learn the technique. These examples, snippets from articles before World War I in the US, all praising this technique as the safest yet devised for cataract surgery. Historians tend to credit the lieutenant colonel with developing it, but if you look at accounts from the time, people who studied with Smith really commented that Noor Ali was just as responsible for developing the successful techniques in the surgery. Moving forward, of course, independence was a watershed event because that brought national control over medical education and expansion of medical education and an upgrading of education. And it set the foundation for what was to come, the towering figures in Indian ophthalmology in the 70s and 80s who established many of the institutions that are now well known around the world. Set the role now for their. This is just a few examples, but many Indian ophthalmologists play key roles in developing technologies for international companies in ophthalmology today. Perhaps more important, or at least as important, is the fact that India is the global leader in cataract surgery. We estimate that 26% of all cataract surgeries are performed in India. Western Europe as a group is second, now at 17%, but that's 26 nations, not one. And the model that India has developed for cataract surgery, with a variety of methods of cataract surgery, is the most successful in the world, and it is really the only model for developing nations other than the established Western model. China, which very consciously established, kind of copied the model, but on faster track of Europe and the US. You see their cataract, these are numbers of cataract surgeries, are well below the numbers in India. And if you look at kind of the last 20 years, you're talking about tens and tens of millions of people more in India who benefited from cataract surgery than benefited in China. So in ophthalmology, India is the only successful alternative model of eye care to the established practice in US and Western Europe. China didn't develop one, Japan didn't develop one, and a lot of that relies on the importance of both Indian industry, making inexpensive IOLs, your use of your patent laws not being as restrictive as in the West, and in the use of MSICS development. I realize it was kind of first developed by an Israeli, but it has been perfected in many different ways here in India, such that it is spread around the world and even to the doorstep of the United States. Some of you probably heard a speaker here yesterday from Mexico about 6 years ago, the Instituto de Ophthalmología in central Mexico, in response to not always being able to provide phaco, sent people to Yerevan to learn MSICS, and they came back and set up their own training program in Mexico. And now graduates of that training program are setting up training programs in other countries, such as Guatemala in Latin America. And this is, it's just examples. You know, it's right on the doorstep of the U.S. They kind of always followed U.S. practices and then realized that in order to serve their own population, they'd look for an alternative, and where they found it was India. If you look at technology being developed, you can also, many of you probably know about the MyLoop being developed by ENTech, which was acquired last year by Zeiss, so looking at MyLoop, and an aspirator system as a phaco-free cataract system, modern cataract system. And that is very much inspired by MSICS in India, and to the extent actually that the idea came from somebody watching YouTube videos of an Indian doctor making snares to slice the cataract. So even if you want to say, oh, might argue they're advancing it with advanced materials, whatever, it's still the inspiration of India is clear. India, however, has not been a leader in retina treatment. The slide on the left is for retina pharma. India accounts for about 1% of retina use in retina pharma. The slide on the right is retinal surgeries. India, you know, despite its large population, is about 8% of vitrectomies worldwide. Nor has India been a leader in glaucoma. The slide on the left is glaucoma surgeries. India accounts for about 4% of those worldwide. Slide on the right are units of glaucoma medicine sold. India is about 12%. Now, and this time you don't have to make an adjustment for revenue because those are units sold. So it's 12% despite the population being much larger. But I think we're at a point in history where there really is a potential for India to become a leader in these areas as well, and thus really become, set the path for world ophthalmology as a whole. And if you look at, again, retinal disease, some of the things being developed in India, and technologies probably likely to be adopted here before adopted in Western Europe or the US. For example, smartphone-based fundus cameras. Doctors Venkatesh and Singh Gupta, I'm sorry I mispronounced the name, their study at Aravind said Remedios provides equal performance to a desk-based camera at 1/5 the cost. Jay Chablani at LV Prasad Institute has been a leader in investigating the use of zivaflibercept as a very inexpensive alternative to Eylea in wet AMD, and he's been doing it for a few years. November was the first paper at the AAO by Americans on this topic. And India, of course, has been a pioneer in developing biosimilars. Maybe I can have 60 seconds more. In glaucoma, inexpensive perimeters being developed. Elisard, based in Chennai, sprung off from the Argowal Eye Hospitals, has won for about a third the cost of a desktop. Another company, I think Oralab, has been negotiating for the Toronto portable perimeter. And their goal, it may have changed, but their goal early in the year was for a perimeter that costs about, a portable perimeter that costs about $30. So I guess that would be about, what, 2,100 rupees? An Israeli firm, Synoculus, negotiating with Ophthalmology to do a stentless MIGS for $100. And of course, primary SLT is you have an option here. Americans have not looked at that. Western Europe, but new studies coming out. There's a 3-year study from Moorfields going to be published in Lancet. So primary SLT is as effective and safe after 3 years as medication. But in England, of course, it's much cheaper. I'm not sure what the situation would be here in India. Again, I don't know if any of these individual technologies will be successful. That's what you will decide. Find what works clinically in your practices. But I think the point is that a lot of the world, developers, new startup companies and developers are looking really at India as the land of opportunity for developing new technologies that will really disrupt the ophthalmic industry and replace technologies being used today. Thank you.